talking, and I wasn't saying, I never go around saying, oh, life's so great. I just tend to keep to my own business and move forward. But he was saying, I could never quit because I would just get so bored. And I go, were you a boring child? And he was like, no. And I was like, well, what'd you do? You hunted, you played baseball, you went fishing, you went to movies, and you start listing all these things that you love doing. And at some point, everyone has a different timeline, but that first time, drinking becomes a part of the lifestyle.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I'm not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I'm someone that doesn't drink alcohol and spend every waking moment of my life helping other people do the same. I'm going to get straight into it this week. No messing about. My guest today is Jason Carter. He is a husband, father, and entrepreneur who struggled for decades with depression and alcoholism before beginning the journey to recovery. And in his new memoir, To Hell I Ride, When a Life Examined Became Worth Living, he takes an unflinching look into the darkest corners of his past and how he found clarity and ultimately redemption on a reflective road trip from Texas to Telluride. My wife tells me that is a very lovely place to go. Now, what do we talk about today? We talked about friendships, how to keep them when we stop drinking alcohol. We talked about how to handle it when our beloved, the people we share our bed with, don't stop drinking when we do. We talked about being a hero, what it means to be a hero, and idolizing our father, particularly around growing up and when they drink and how that impacts us. We talked about parenting. We talked about filling in white space. We talked about the link between boredom and depression. We talked about codependency. We talked about curiosity and the art of communication. Really, it was a good old chin wag on everything and anything to do with the sober life. So without further ado, I will shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of Jason Carter. So, Jason, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's a Monday morning, coming off a little, I guess, I don't want to say cold because people would assume I have COVID or something. And I don't. I think it was just an allergy situation, but starting to feel better and excited about the week ahead.
So you wrote the book, To Hell I Ride, When a Life Examined Became Worth Living. What prompted you to write a book?
Well, I'd long been a suffering writer of sorts, starting way back in the 90s and writing screenplays and whatnot. And the book came about where I stopped drinking about 7 years ago. And a lot of things led up to that and the moment of clarity and whatnot. And I really had a hard time kind of explaining it to myself because I never really thought that I was a quote unquote alcoholic or something. And as I started thinking about it more and more, I'm a pretty introspective and contemplative guy. I started writing things down, really what led up to it, and probably negotiating with myself, my addict self, like, well, maybe I could start drinking again. I don't know. It wasn't that bad. And I just felt that it was a good story to share because I always lean towards books when I'm trying to figure out something new or understand a life experience better. And a lot of the books that I read that were written by people who were discussing their own trials and tribulations were very good in many cases. And in some cases, I found it hard to relate just in the fact that it's, maybe it was about Ozzy Osbourne and how he was snorting ants or something. And I just didn't find that relatable. And so I just thought, if this is a story that can help one guy getting off an airplane to Milwaukee or something after a big bachelor party weekend or something and just needed to feel normal again, I thought that this would be a story worth telling. And so I wrote the book and it was really a more enlightening experience for me than I ever imagined because it's told in a linear fashion starting from about the time I was 5 years old and I had my first exposure to alcohol and seeing my father get a little too overserved and behave in a certain way that frightened me. And I had to really go back and relive those moments in such granular detail that it was emotionally exhausting. And that really helped me, make sure the writing was strong, because I have children, and it made me realize absolutely they are remembering, they're recording as soon as they're probably born, but certainly by the time they're 3, 4, 5, and 6, everything that they're seeing is getting inputted onto their mental hard drive, and it's going to, I guess, affect the long-term programming of their lives. And that was such a clarifying moment, because I think a lot of parents, they may get a little too drunk at the beach or the barbecue, and little Timmy is over there playing catch. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, maybe he won't remember or notice. And I think it's just something that a lot of people do, even into adulthood, where they're doing their best to negotiate with themselves that what they're doing, even if they realize it's wrong, well, maybe nobody will notice. And so putting this story together was a way of me not only recognizing that the things that you do in your life experience do in fact affect others, but you can certainly use them if they're presented correctly as a teaching tool. And so, the book is really, it's very relatable to anybody that is either drinking or doing something that they know is not good, and how it's affecting others. And maybe just it'll help them look at it in a different way, because it is a little humorous, and it was a way to just kind of almost not really forgive myself, but just to look back and go, okay, look, we're not perfect by any means. And if you look at it through a softer lens, then it's maybe not as horrible as you once imagined. And at the end of the day, you got to move on and with your life anyhow. And I just think it's a great story for anybody that's looking to either understand somebody that might have a problem with drinking, or they do themselves, simply just to look at it through the view of a different prism.
Sounds like it was a good form of therapy for you.
It was incredibly therapeutic. And, one of the main underlying characters in the book is my relationship with my dad, who is no longer with us, but he was, my hero, but a problem drinker. And my parents split at, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And so we always had a very complicated relationship. And it was really the writing process, more importantly, the editing process, and going through this and rethinking this and reimagining it, to where I was able to get to a point where I thought of my dad in a more loving way. And just, he was, he was an only child, and, fought in Vietnam, came back, had kids, and tried to get a job, got his master's. And I think and back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, when men weren't supposed to really show emotion or talk about their feelings, or certainly even with their friends, their man friends, they didn't go there. I just can't imagine my dad ever sitting down on a fishing dock with one of his friends and saying, Jim, I'm really worried about the way I'm being a father and presenting myself to my kids. And I wonder what that's going to affect them. And I think for many years, I held that against him. And now I certainly just don't. And I know it opened up a way for me to just really, retroactively, I guess, love him and his existing spirit now. And I think that you can learn so much in life by watching people do it the wrong way and simply do the opposite. So there's a part of me that really believes, he was just showing me the wrong way. I know that he wasn't hoping that I would follow in his footsteps. And later in life, when I realized I pretty much was where, especially when it came to drinking, that was a real moment in my life where I knew change was a must.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of the things I often say on here is forgiveness is really important to me because I'm always seeking it. So because I'm always seeking it, I always want to give it. And I loved when you said your father was your hero, and I'm sorry to hear that he passed, by the way. But to hear you say that he's your hero, whenever I hear people say that, I there's a part of me that feels a little envy, because I never really looked at my dad in that way. Like I couldn't tell you my dad's my hero. I just wanted him out of my life when I was younger. But as I got older, I realized that and drinking as well, and stopping drinking, that helps you really for me anyway, it accelerated my spiritual and emotional maturity, right? And I was able to realize that if I keep moaning and groaning about my dad and blaming my dad for everything that's gone wrong in my life, he's actually taking up a lot of energetic real estate. And if I actually was to come to peace with that, wow, I've got like this amount of energy that I can put into some of a good use. In your case, write a book or be a better father to our children. So I'm with you on that score. I'm glad that you were able to, realize that, like everybody, he probably just did the best with what he had. And then before he knew it, time had gone by, right?
That's correct. And on 2 points, the hero piece, this was, from a very young age. We're talking 5 and 6 years old. And, the idea for me of a hero was, a strong man, a tough man. Certainly he didn't fit the qualifications of what I would probably label a hero today. So it was a very childish version and more, I think, hopeful. I mean, I started recognizing the cracks in his armor as I detail in the book at a very young age. And so it became a very complicated relationship because I so desperately wanted a dad that was a true hero. But like you said, the alcohol, I think this goes it's not spoken enough about enough, I think, is that, it does a lot of bad things, but at the very core, it robs you or any individual of all of this energy and time. And, the moment you kind of feel that little buzz of your third drink, you're detached from reality, where you're not seeing things right. And so if you were to look at somebody and their flaws or your own flaws, specifically your own flaws, they start to soften and it's not so bad. And, maybe I don't have to go work out. I look great. Look in the mirror. And so I think when I finally quit drinking, it took a while, but I mean, and maybe this is the reason people go back to drinking is because you have to start filling that time that was long reserved, let's call it 5 p.m. to pass out or whatever, 9 p.m. That's drinking time. And so, I mean, that's almost a full-time job. We're talking 4 or 5 hours a day. And now that window is open for you to, not only do something, but you also have to think. You have no choice but looking in the mirror and accepting exactly what's looking back at you. Yeah. You can't run and hide from it. And so you can either elevate or regress.
Two things. We at Strive, we call that space white space. So we have this physical white space in front of us. We also have the mental white space. And 2 things come up for me. One is, holy crap, now we have to fill it because the mental white space was just wiped out because we were just blind drunk. And the physical white space was the act of drinking and probably, in my case, watching the football on the telly or jumping around and dancing around or whatever. We got to fill it with someone else. But then there's that other thing in there that you stop drinking And then all of a sudden, you see your child come to you asking you to play. And you can't say, oh, yeah, later on, I'm just having a drink a sec. Like she or he is there in front of you. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I kind of don't want to, but I don't know how to communicate. I didn't realize I was running away from this before, and now it's right in front of my face. And then you realize, wow, I have a lot of healing to do, or you don't, and you just start drinking again, right? Because all of a sudden, this new reality is nothing like you thought it would be.
Yeah, I for me, my experience, I tried to stop drinking once. I think I was 35, and it stuck for about 9 months. And I didn't really think I was ever, I kind of quit because I was, trying to get people to back off probably. But I started, you have that manic energy. And so I started, I'm going to run a marathon. And so I just spent all my time running. And, that is great. But once the marathon was over, there was nowhere to run. And
I was going to say, what a great metaphor. What else was you running away from, right?
Exactly. And it's what's so interesting about that to me, looking back on it, is I was absolutely just running literally and figuratively from myself and my life. I mean, I was getting up at certain points in the training program, you had 18-mile runs on a Saturday. And, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. because I'm in Texas and it was in August, and, you got to get out on the street before it gets too hot. And, I realized that you just can't run from it. Yeah, you get the endorphin rush. Yes, you lose weight. But at the end of the day, you're back home at like 9 a.m. and your kids are coming out and they want your time. Your wife wants your time. And you want to give that time. But because you've run so much, you're kind of exhausted, and it just really replaced drinking as something that kind of controlled me. So I always caution people, if they ever ask me, any tips, if I decide to stop drinking, I'm like, don't run a marathon.
Don't go running away. Don't go.
Yeah.
Don't do Forrest Gump.
Right. And I think that, we're in the golden age of, the creators. We're able to, anybody can create a video and throw it up on the line and whatnot. And there are so many meaningful people out there in the sobriety world that are, I think, putting up some really good messaging. But the ones that make me cringe are the ones that are just, oh, it's so great. Look at me. I'm on the beach. I'm, losing weight and I'm running around. But the reality is, life is still there. And now it's just more intense. And for the most part, a lot of people aren't interested. And I think there was an expectation at one point on my first attempt that I wasn't expecting like a ticker tape parade, but I certainly was shocked at the way, nobody really cared. They carried on with their own lives. And I wasn't expecting people to join me in the morning, or for an afternoon yoga session over happy hour. But I think as a human, it kind of hurts your feelings a little bit when nobody has even a base level of curiosity to just go, hey, how's it going? What's it like? Gosh, I mean, you and I have been best friends for 20 years and we've bonded so closely over these, 12 packs and a deer blind. What can we talk about now? And I just found that I never found any of those conversations with my former friends.
Let's focus on this actually, because in our Stripe community, Liz from Scotland, she actually just made a big post in the community, and she's been with us for a while now. She hasn't had a drink for a long, long time. The odd blip, but you're talking like maybe one drink in a year or something. And she started going into poetry. So she's filling her white space up with poetry, and she's writing poems. She went to a writers' conference the other day. She really is putting a full weight behind it. She's really getting into a feminine groove. And she said, it's such a shame that I'm writing and sharing what I'm doing on social media and nobody's paying any attention to it. Yet my friend will put a poster up or something like she's fallen over drunk or something and everyone's laughing and joking. And she said, is this like this for everyone? And most people in the community said, yeah, that happened to me as well. My friends disappeared and vanished, from me. I'll put it over to you and then I'll have my 2 cents worth. But talk about your thoughts and feelings around that. You've shared a little bit about it, but why do you think that happens?
Well, I came to terms. I refer to alcohol as king alcohol, and I have an immense amount of respect for booze because it's almost irresistible, and it for me. I'm just thinking, okay, how could I expect anybody to come over and do night gardening with me with my little headlamp and pruning over, getting gassed at a steakhouse and drinking wine? I mean, it's fun. And so I just kind of realized, it's not me. It's that alcohol is that great. It's that much more fun. And I think that, just from a male perspective, I think it's very rare that you find another man that you can have a really good conversation with, unless it's over a couple beers at the airport bar or, on a road trip or, on a whatever. And it to me, the message was from the universe is you just got to keep looking and you got to try a little harder. And a great example, I started doing some bike riding, and there's a great bike shop 2 blocks from my house. And I'll go in there and, get a tire change or something. And I'll start talking to the guy behind the counter, the service technician, and we'll have a 30, 40-minute conversation, a great conversation. And he's telling me about places that he rides in New Mexico. And I'm realizing, man, these conversations and these friendships and relationships, they're everywhere. They're bountiful. The world provides us with probably an unlimited supply. You just got to go out and find it and make that a little bit a bigger part of your life, because the drinking aspects with your group of, let's just call it 30 friends that you've known forever, the contracts that you kind of entered into, the social contracts were kind of written with a pen dipped in red wine. And so when you quit drinking, you're in breach of that contract. And it's really, I own it. I own the fault. And whether that makes any sense or not, if it's true or not, it's helped me realize and be, I guess, more compassionate and understanding. Because I realized when I was in my prime Michael Jordan drinking years, any friend of mine that quit, I remember thinking, oh, I'm really happy for that guy. I might be a little jealous. And every time he's around, I'm a little uncomfortable, because I know that as I order my 5th drink, he's going home and he might mow the yard and he might play catch with Johnny. And he's going to wake up tomorrow feeling great. And I'm not. And so I really felt it, in terms of just being jealous, envious. And it just kind of made me feel worse about myself.
I was lucky I never had that, because I didn't know anybody who'd ever quit. But, thanks for sharing that, Jason. But, for anybody listening, Jason talks a lot of sense there. So if you have, if you're worried about stopping drinking in any degree, whether it's forever or for a couple of months or whatever, and you're worried that your friends will leave you, then rewind 5 minutes and listen to that again, because he gave some really good advice. Similarly, if you stop drinking and you feel that your friends kind of left you behind, or they're not interacting with you or whatever, listen to that. I'll add my little bit here as well, because I think it's a really important conversation. And then I'll open it up to Jason if he's got further comments. And please write to me at thestrivemethod@gmail.com if you've got any questions on this, because it's a big one. I think what tends to happen first and foremost when I see people who stop drinking and this change happens is very quickly the person who stopped drinking actually looks outward and starts to make villains of those people who are no longer interacting in the way they were. And then they dip into victim consciousness. So they take up the role of victim and they say, why are these people not talking or communicating with me like they used to? And they make them a villain, right? And so first and foremost, you've got to get out of that, right? You've got to get out of that victim. And the easiest way to get out of that victimhood is to understand one key thing. And Jason touched upon it. When we decide that we are never going to drink again, and we have friends that stretch 2-3 decades, and it's always been glued together with alcohol, we got to understand and accept that we're introducing a massive change into that relationship, right? And that person or persons, they probably have no idea how to handle it. They're probably going through a grieving and mourning process. They're probably afraid. They might be jealous. They might be envious. They might be afraid of losing you. They might be just uncomfortable. They might be joyful for you, whatever, but something's going on. So the most important thing, I think, for me is ask them what's going on for them and just have a conversation. This is where learning communication skills when you stop drinking is really important. Have a conversation with them. Say, hey, Jace, I noticed we're not in touch anymore. I just wondered what was up and what's going on for you. So that's first and foremost, right? So let's not just make shit up. Let's have a conversation. And then secondly, take the bull by the horns, right? Start with your current friendship group, those that you really like, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, they're drifting away from me and I really love them. Some of them you won't care, but the ones you really love, and just work hard at keeping them. Approach them and ask them to do something else. Say to them, I remember I went to my friend once, his name was Neil Farm, Jason. I said, do you want to go to pictures? He said, who with? I said, just me. The picture of the movies, right?
Yeah.
With me. Well, I can't go to movies with you. Why not? I'm going. Why don't you come with me? We can go to Starbucks. We can have a coffee. We can have a laugh, and we go to the movies. All right, fuck it, he said. So we went to movies. We left, and he said, when are we doing it again?
Yeah.
Right. And all it took was that bravery and courageous and vulnerability that you're not going to be turned down. And then, a lot of your friends will want to do something different. Some of them won't. And then you'll just find new ones. But you have to get out of that victim consciousness, right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the victim thing, is I never looked at myself that way. But I was veering towards, looking at others, kind of down my nose a little bit.
Yeah.
But kind of like, and sometimes I'm not able to maybe mask that. Maybe my thoughts, I kind of carry them on my face. And I think it's also the risk of being, turning into, somebody that's very pious. And I know that I am not, but sometimes I might make a remark, that isn't received very well. And one of my really good friends, and he and I were like the Abbott and Costello of drinking. I mean, life of every party. And we were talking, and I wasn't saying, I never go around saying, oh, life's so great. I just tend to keep to my own business and move forward. But he was saying, I could never quit because I would just get so bored. And I go, were you a boring child? And he was like, no. And I was like, well, what'd you do? You hunted, you played baseball, you went fishing, you went to movies, and you start listing all these things that you love doing. And at some point, everyone has a different timeline, but that first time, drinking becomes a part of the lifestyle. You think that none of those other things are fun anymore, unless you're drinking. And the greatest thing that happened to me, and it took, I don't know, maybe a year, maybe longer, was to realize that's why I started riding my bike. I bought a skateboard, and because I go, well, what did I do when I was a kid? I rode my bike until the lights, until the sun went down. I skateboarded. I played basketball, so I got a basketball hoop. I did a lot of reading, and I love movies. Movies, and I remember drinking would take more importance of going to see a movie when there used to be nothing more important to me than Friday when a new movie came out, to be there early enough to get a ticket so I could get a good seat, my popcorn somewhere in the middle row. And you just realize there's so many fun things to do, without drinking. And drinking's great because I think it's the easy button for life. You really could be stuck at an airport with a 4-hour delay, and you might have the best day ever because you're going to go to the bar, you're going to meet some people, and you're going to talk about that experience forever. And, maybe as a sober person, you'd have to get more creative, whether it's either just go get a book or, I don't know, see if the airport has a great lounge with showers and then you could go on a jog outside. But it's not easy. You have to go out and find it. But the rewards are there.
If you're thinking that there's more to life than this, then good, you're waking up. Now, one of the most critical steps when choosing to up-level your life is to find a tribe who sees and hears you, because feeling like you matter is so important. Strivers are a community of people united in the common goal of becoming people who don't drink alcohol and living a self-led life. So if you crave freedom, compassion and peace, Strive is for you. And you can join our amazing community for free. All you have to do is email thestrivemethod@gmail.com and we'll get you signed up. Two things that I wanted to touch on there is one. So I just come back from a working trip in Cyprus where I was working at a high stakes poker 3-week tournament series they had there, and we had a party, like a real plush high end party for the seat draw. It's like a World Cup draw type of thing for the seats. And when I got there, as you expect in a high stakes poker tournament, there's lots of beautiful people there, half naked, and there's so much expensive plonk going around. And obviously I don't drink, right? And the music and the DJs and stuff. And I said to my partner next to me, she said to me, what do you think about this? Are you uncomfortable? I said, I'm not uncomfortable, but I tell you this, if we were to just click our fingers and suddenly all the alcohol just disappeared and vanished, right? If it just all vanished, you've got a world-class DJ here. Everybody's bopping to the beat, right? We've got the draw and everyone's laughing and joking about it because it's really funny. We're all culturally from different parts of the world, all getting together, and we haven't seen each other for like 3 months because, tournaments don't happen every day. And look around, everyone's communicating. Do you think if we remove the alcohol, all of a sudden everybody would just stop talking? And of course they wouldn't, right? There would be no alcohol. Everybody would listen to music. They would get into it and they would just deal with it, right? They would deal with it. They would commune and they would have a laugh. It's just a big red herring for people because all they've ever known in those circumstances is that alcohol is there. And the story is that alcohol will improve your life. I'll give you an example. Took my daughter Zia, she's 6 tomorrow. Took her to watch Frozen the musical. And there's a part of the musical, a little scene, a dance where they call this Danish word "højge," which is fun. And the first thing they sing is "højge" is alcohol. They're singing that to 5-6-year-olds. So that's one of the reasons why we think. The other thing I just wanted to touch upon is that whenever I hear someone say, I don't know how you can stop drinking alcohol because it's bored, or they try to stop drinking alcohol and then they say they have to start again because they're bored. For me, it's a sign of depression. The alcohol is masking the depression, and then they stop drinking and it hits them. And they're just like, they're mistaking boredom for depression. They just don't know what to do and they don't have the energy to do anything. They start to procrastinate. They go in the depressive loop and they just think, oh, well, life's boring, not life is depressing. And then they start drinking again, So, if you're listening, Think
it's the easy
about that,
button.
man. Yeah. The cure-all. The cure-all.
It is the cure-all. And I have my daughter. I have 3 children, and my daughter she's going to turn 14 the 2nd of October. And the greatest thing to ever come from me not drinking is just the connected relationship I have with my kids. My son now is a freshman in college, and they're drinking beers, going to keg parties. I know all that stuff, but with her, she's still not there, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. I'm no idiot, but I really think that they see something. They're like, they know that I don't drink, and they know that everybody in my life does. I mean, I live in a very boozy town, state in Texas. It's a way of life. But I get a sense that they're seeing it and going, you know what? I kind of like the way Dad's doing it. He's always, I know exactly who he is at all times. He doesn't seem to, go out all the time like everybody else, but I'm really enjoying this time with him. And we went to New York about 6 months ago, my daughter and I and wife. And, I used to live in New York, and every time I went back to visit, it's the drinking capital of the world. I think it's the greatest place to drink 5 martinis at lunch and then go find some dark bar to finish the day. And I'd been there a couple times by myself ever since I stopped drinking on business. And I wasn't ever scared, but I literally was there. I'm like, man, I could literally go and do whatever I want. Nobody's going to know. But I didn't want to. And so I walked around Central Park, and then spent the latter part of the evening looking for like the best cheesecake in town. And it was just, I had a lot of fun. Came back to the hotel, watched the movie. And so when I took my daughter there, it was so fun seeing it through her eyes, a child's eyes, walking around Central Park. We went and saw a musical, and, that delight that she had was so real, and I was having it too. And I had no alcohol. And it takes a while for people that have done nothing else, just like I did, to realize that, man, there's plenty of fun to be had without drinking, but you got to get up off your ass and you got to go do something. And it's there. And you have to believe that it's there, because, drinking is just so easy to make anything fun.
I just finished reading Stephen Pressfield's latest book, Put Your Ass Where You Want Your Heart to Be. And when you just said you need to get off your ass, I was thinking that's a good equation for stopping drinking. Actually, is first first take your heart away from alcohol and visualize where you want your heart to be. You want your heart to be with your family, with your friends, connection, and all that kind of stuff. And then put your ass where you want your heart to be by working to the grindstone and make that a reality, doing everything you can, to make it a reality. I mean, when you were talking then, another memory of my recent trip to Cyprus, came up to me. I was working with a team from Latvia and Estonia in Eastern Europe. And 2 people in particular I was working with a lot, and having dinner with them every day. And I realized they were a couple. And I realized that when we were talking, I was talking about all the problems that have plagued my relationships all my life. And they were kind of looking at me like, what? Like, how's that a problem? And I realized that these 2 people, for whatever reason, they were not codependent. That they were raised very healthily and had a real emotional maturity about them, which meant that, as a child, I think had they, you're talking about your children now, and I got a 21-year-old, the fight is, are they going to be codependent and worrying too much about external, the outside in, like, am I going to be liked or left behind by these people, versus the hope that the sobriety movement is catching up really quick and our kids are going to think it's hip and cool, versus these Eastern Europeans who probably kind of like, I'll drink because I want to. I'm not going to drink because you want me to. Do you know what I mean? They seem to have a more healthy way about them. And I could see straight away, holy shit, the reason my son really drinks and finds it really difficult not to is because he wants them to like him in the same way that I wanted people to like me, and I transmitted that onto him, you know?
That's the home run headline, I think, of the show right now is, by writing the book, I realized, with divorce, I moved states, meaning I was the new kid at school, 3 or 4 times. And every single time I had to come up with an identity really quick. I didn't want to get beat up on the playground. And I was, athletic guy. So it was usually with athletics. But I realized it was even, a better way to get known is to be the guy that is the first out of the plane, with the parachute. And that means like, I'll drink that. I'll drink that. And that was, a big part of my persona was that guy can handle his liquor. He's the guy that could drive, after 13 beers. And on a deeper level, which I did not realize is, with my parents splitting up when I was in 3rd grade, and I would go back in the summer. My dad stayed in California and stay with him. And I became his drinking buddy, starting at about 7th grade. He would cook steaks and, let me drink a few beers. I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world. So I kind of associated drinking with, this is how my dad and I are going to have a relationship. How effed up is that? We're not going to go, build a house for humanity or, pick up trash on the sea. We're going to split a 12-pack of Coors. And that's a thing. And I've even thought to myself, we're in Texas and my sons are, they hunt deer and all this stuff. And my son once, he even said, he was like, told my wife, I'm so glad, I don't really care. I'm glad Dad didn't drink, but man, it'd be cool to have a beer with him down on the ranch. Yeah. And I even thought that. I was like, what a moment. But then I reframed it and I'm like, what a moment. Like watching me get wasted to the point where I like fall over into the campfire. I mean, I'm sure that would be a real moment for him. And, so I think it was like, there was a part of me that was like, oh, maybe I could just, but I'm like, no, that's not a real moment. We could just as much have an iced tea and go cruising around. And if he wants to drink some beers, fine. But I think it's the whole, alcohol is just so, King Alcohol has done such a great PR job. And the fact that that's it, it's not the problem. It's usually the individual that can't manage it or, but everybody thinks it's so great. My wife still drinks, she's not a lush, but she drinks and it bothers me to the point that she seems to get upset. Like she thinks I'm counting her drinks. I don't, but I've talked to her about it and I go, there's just, this is just as black and white as math and science. If you have your 4th glass of wine, at that point, the voice level rises, your pitch gets a little slow. You're not listening. So I would choose to not be around you. There's nothing else to it. It's not that you're not attractive. It's not that I don't love you, but it's like you're choosing to go to this place and that's fine. I respect it. You have freedom, but I'm also choosing to go to this place. And it's definitely caused a lot of tension in our marriage. And I think that's another thing. If anybody's listening where one spouse maybe has the problem and one doesn't, that's going to cause a rift, because it's a choice, and you can't help but say and think to yourself, she's choosing the fourth wine over me, and I get it, because that's exactly what I used to do. I mean, I would choose, going back to the bar over going home with a beautiful model. I mean, I loved drinking that much. And so I understand its pull, its attraction, and how after a few, your judgment is just, it becomes laser focused on getting that next one and continuing that fun. And I'm all for it. Do what you want. Everybody has their freedom, but I would rather go home and, rake some leaves, spray the cars down. I've really gotten big into minimizing. So, man, anytime I can go into my office or room and find things to throw away, that's a really good time.
I mean, thank you for being so open and vulnerable there. I really appreciate it, because it's a really important topic, and my thoughts on the whole I've stopped drinking, my partner hasn't. It's for me, it's all about the way the world looks at addiction to me. So, like using your wife as an example here, right? The world would say, you probably say, is according to the definition of addiction, she's not an addict, right? She just likes to have a drink every now and then or whatever, right? But the thing for me is alcohol is an addictive substance, right? So once you start drinking it, it kicks off a chain reaction whereby you will prioritize it over anything else. And that includes whatever your partner wants you to do or not do that night. That is part of the addiction, but it's not sold that way. It's not sold that way. It's sold in a way that alcohol is the greatest thing in the world and it's amazing. And anybody who doesn't want to drink is an absolute boring bastard, right? So in that case where you're quite rightly saying, hey, look, this is just the rational, logical aspect of it, and it touches on emotion as well, is that when you drink and I don't, we become disconnected. Yep. It doesn't connect us, it disconnects us, because you're moving further and further away from intimacy, because that's what alcohol does. And I get it. You want me to drink so we come closer. But if I drink, it's just going to exacerbate and speed it up. And we're going to be even more disconnected, but we'll probably have sex that we don't remember, call it wild and think that it was cool. But if we don't drink just for tonight, we actually got a chance of making a difference here and actually getting connected. Why? Because we will be forced to do something different, which may be actually talk to each other.
Yeah, I look at it as a couple of things, like with the intimacy. I mean, that is just so beautifully said. And if a relationship between two people or anybody, I think of it as a fire. And if you pour wine on it, the fire goes out, and, start seeming, I mean, probably scientifically it actually flames. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? You're cooling off the heat. And then you have to reignite that heat. And that takes time, you got to get more wood. You got to get the right kind of breeze. And so to me, anytime somebody is drinking, whatever heat we're generating, whether it's, a man, woman, business conversation, stranger on a plane, it's getting cooled off by booze. Because for me, it's just all the sincerity, all of the realness of it is just being extracted from the moment. And I'm okay with that. I understand that, but don't expect me to sit there and keep fanning the flames. I'm like, I realize this fire is going out. So I'm going to go over here and try and find something else. And I think the other part of it is that, the way alcohol is presented, it's, I've had a hard week, I deserve this, and everybody's in that mindset, work hard, play hard. And if you're not in that mindset, then something's wrong with you. And one of the questions that you probably get and I get, and anybody who's ever quit drinking is, so why'd you quit? It's kind of an aggressive approach to the question.
What's wrong with you?
Exactly. And I haven't really said this, but I always think it, and maybe someday I will, but I think it's a little too aggressive, but I'll go, well, wait, why are you still drinking? Like, tell me the benefits. Tell me all the good things that are happening because you are drinking. I mean, I'm sitting on pins and needles. I can't wait to hear it. And, as you said earlier, there could be a trend. I think that the younger kids, I don't know what generation they are now, Z or millennials, they didn't drink the way we used to. I'm sure there's little pockets, but I think that with the combination of, the remote kind of workforce and, the lack of, I guess, this generation wanting to, get the 30-year mortgage and be locked down, it doesn't seem like they're drinking as much, and maybe weed is better or whatever they're doing, but it just doesn't seem like that anybody's growing up. Because my idols were the old bankers sitting at the country club smoking cigars and drinking scotch. Like that's who I wanted to be. And I think a lot of younger people are looking at I don't know, kind of either show business stars or athletes or computer whizzes and going, no, that's who I want to be. And so I think not drinking is the coolest thing anybody can do. I just feel like I'm at the vanguard, you and I, and anybody else who's finally stopped. We're just way ahead of the curve, but it's coming. I mean, I just don't know how much longer, logic can be ignored.
I think one of the things I often think about is whether or not codependency in social media will actually just eat itself alive. And one of the fortunate, lucky, positive side effects is that people don't drink. So like, I'm going to pick on my boy here a little bit, which is a little bit unfair. Jude, if you're listening to this, I do apologize. But whenever he posts something on Instagram, it's typically, it's either him out with his mates having a drink or he's in the gym flashing his guns, right? And I'll say to him, what are you doing it for? Like, are you doing it because health and fitness is really important to you and you want to show people what, that change can happen? Or are you posting it because you want people to see that you look good, right? Because if it's the latter, then, maybe you need to stop and think about why that is, right? And I've had those conversations with him. And I think that if that trend continues and people are consistently bombarded with these images of this need or desire to fit in and look really good, then actually being blind drunk and looking like a complete dog. I mean, there was this advert in the UK where they did it, but the woman was in front of the mirror, and instead of putting her makeup on to go out, she had cigarette ash and she put it on her face. She smudged the lipstick. She messed all her hair up. She, got all her makeup, mascara dripping. She ripped her clothes, and then she was like, "Okay, let's go out because this is what I'm going to look like when I finish." So maybe the vanity of being a teenager will stop people from drinking in the future.
It could. And I think there's also something you said about, as you, with your podcast, I have a book. We have to be on social promoting it. We didn't write a book because I want people to read it. And I'm finding it's kind of difficult to, the kind of message, because I just want to be sincere, but I'm also like, well, I can't help but think like, well, I wonder what so-and-so will think about this. Because, there's the part of us that are all entertainers and you want to put out a good quality product. But on the social stuff, I think it's just all become this blind feed. I have a great example. 3 or 4 years ago is my birthday, and I invited 3 other couples to come, and everybody drank, and I was, picking up the tab at this pretty expensive restaurant, and there was a before picture. It's like, hey, look, it's my birthday. But 2 hours later, one of the people at my table was hiccuping so loudly from the martinis that literally the bartender had come over and go, please, you cannot hiccup anymore, because it was a pretty quiet restaurant. Another chap is passed out. I mean, literally asleep in the breadbasket, using it as a pillow. Another couple was hammered and they were fighting, ended up leaving. This was my birthday, and I was, I'm sitting there drinking iced tea, and that's what should have been on Instagram. It's like, happy birthday. This is real life. And of course, people go to their social media feeds because they're trying to escape real life. And I think that's what you get there. But I think there's an app now called Be Real. I don't know if it's picked up over in the UK yet, but the idea of it is that if someone takes a picture and you're included, then you have like 1 minute to take a picture, and it's from both sides of your camera. So it gets a picture of your face and exactly where you are. Mm-hmm. And people are loving it. And so it's like, if you get zinged or whatever, pinged, and you're sitting there watching reruns of, Netflix, and you're covered in popcorn, that's the picture, of your ugly television. And I think that people are so thirsty for just something that's real, because the younger kids now are so savvy. They know what's BS and not. And, everyone's got filters, and it's just not interesting anymore. So the combination of what you said, and I think that the appetite for just good old fashioned honesty, those things just don't go out of style. And I think they're probably on the verge of making a big comeback.
It's interesting how you said about the images there, because I've been devouring a lot of Blake Snyder's Save the Cat material, the screenwriting books, and he has like 15 beats that every story should have.
Yep.
The first beat is the first image. So in your story, what is the first image that you're going to give someone? And then the final beat, what's the last image? And of course, Snyder's saying what you want to get across to the audience in your story, whichever format you want to use it, is this change. Like, look what happened. Yeah, look what happened, right? And what you're saying there is, in the story of so many people's lives, that first image is of them looking half decent. And that final image is a complete mess, probably in the ER, whatever. And that is the story arc that we're choosing, where, and I think this is why so many people who, when they actually stop drinking, they do this before and after picture, don't they? They show themselves all bloated, et cetera, and then you show themselves super skinny running a marathon or whatever. Is to show that, hey, positive things can happen if you stop drinking. But it's only an if, right? Like, stopping drinking, I always say, to my clients, stopping drinking didn't stop me from being a prick. You talked about, your dad being a hero of yours. And it reminded me of the book, The King, the Warrior, Magician, Lover, and the archetypes, the masculine archetypes, and the hero archetype being the final archetype of boy energy. Like, we have to slay the hero to become a warrior, to become a healthy masculine role model. And it's so interesting that whenever we get into conversations about the way it used to be and the way we used to behave when we're drinking, that the hero comes up all the time. And when you stop drinking, it's less a hero's journey and more a warrior's journey, and so.
That's true.
No.
And I think that if, the before and after pictures on the sobriety feeds, they're great. And I'm so proud of so many millions of people that have done it. But, maybe the series I need to start is like, what am I doing on Friday night now that I don't drink? And there's a picture of me sitting outside of a grocery store like at 11 p.m., going, don't go get more ice cream. You're so fast, because the truth is, problems that you have when you drink, whether they're financial, personal, etc. They don't go away. They're just waiting for you to finally deal with them. And that is, that's a great thing to do, but it takes time to wedge through it all and really get to that after picture. And so, the story of, on Instagram has taught us to like, oh, look, it's Barney. He's 300 pounds and he's, in a fight at a bar. And now he's, doing yoga. I'm interested in everything in between there. That's
the process. The process.
The hero's journey, if you will.
How did he get there? Jason, it's been lovely talking to you. I really appreciate it. Folks, To Hell I Ride, When a Life Examined Become Worth Living. Go out, get it, listen to it. How else can people get hold of you?
Well, speaking of social, I just keep everything on Instagram. I don't really do TikTok. I have a little website, but I've just found that Instagram is where people hang out and talk. So I think it's JDC_SA, and just come there, follow me. I'll follow you back and shoot me a DM. My new drug of choice is curiosity. And I love hearing from other people and hearing what they're up to. And I love the world we live in, that you and I are sitting here having a great conversation. You're in your home, I'm in my home, and you're in Scotland, I believe. Is that
Wales? Yeah.
Wales. Okay.
Yeah.
One of my very best friends, his dad is from Pakistan and his mom is from Wales. And
right.
They're just hit their 80s, and they came to America many, many, many years ago. And so I love Wales, and she's very proud of Wales, and very, very great person. So it's no surprise that you are too.
It's a nice place. It's a nice place, although they do like their drinks here. Jason, I'm gonna bid you farewell. I have a 5-year-old desperate to jump in the room here and join her dad. So I'll catch you later.
Okay, really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. Without you, the listener, there is no podcast. So thank you for stepping up today. Please go to your podcast player, rate and review the show. It will help people get to know about it a little bit more, and we can save some more lives. I just want to say a special thanks to our producer, Stan, who is currently in the Ukraine. If you would like to help and support Stan and his family, email us at thestrivemethod@gmail.com and we'll find a way to do that. Special thanks to all of our guests who make this show so magical, and our Strive family for uniting in our common goal to be people who don't drink alcohol and live self-led lives. And if you want to join us, email us at thestrivemethod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you enjoyed this show, tell somebody about it. You could seriously change somebody's life. Strive on, everybody.